Well, you did an interview with the Cornell Sun, and you said, as far as I understand, there was never a country called Palestine.
Yeah. Did I say that? I don't know. When was this?
Um,
But you know the history of the name Palestine, where it comes from.
Explain it to me.
That's probably what I was referring to. Basically, the British controlled Palestine. Prior to that, other empires. It was never its own. And in ancient times, that that entire name it comes from a different place. It was Judea, Samaria. It was a Jewish homeland, like before anything, and later on it was acquired by different empires and established. And I don't know exactly when, but at some point is where the name Palestine came up. Yeah.
Well, right. I mean, before the formation of Israel, that region was controlled by the British.
Correct.
And there were both Jews and Palestinians.
Jews and Arabs.
In that region.
Jews and Arabs living there. Yeah, Jews and Muslims.
Jews and Arabs.
Yeah.
And Muslims were living in the same region. There was a lot of conflict and so forth.
Yeah.
After World War II and the genocide that happened, the UN essentially gave it,
back to the
Jewish people, and it became Israel.
Yeah.
And then with that became all the wars and all the attacks and everything else like that.
Well, the attacks started before that because there were Jews living in Israel prior to that, and some of the worst attacks that ever occurred happened before the State of Israel, was called the State of Israel by the United Nations.
Now, I'll be honest. Like, I'm Jewish. I went to Israel. What's it called? Birthright. After I graduated from college, with a group of other young people. I'm not a fan of Netanyahu. I don't agree with the way they handled the whole situation of the building of the West Bank and what they actually did in Gaza and so forth. Netanyahu as a person, I feel, is not really the right leader. Because as long as I've been around, as long as I've been alive, there has been conflict between Jews and Jews and Muslims in that region. And I remember even when I went to Israel, the tour guide, that was showing us around, we went to the square where Rabin got killed.
Yeah.
And he kind of broke down the whole story to us about how Rabin and what's the name of the PLO leader at the time?
Yasser Arafat.
Arafat. They had been at war forever, both sides, killing each other and so forth. They realized as they got older, and Rabin was a general in the Israeli army, so this was an actual soldier.
I was there. I was actually in Israel when he got assassinated. That's when
you were there when it happened. Okay, but you weren't in the square when it happened, though.
No, but I was in Israel when that happened.
You were in Israel when it happened,
and I remember trying to understand it. Like how come a Jew assassinated another Jew? Like I didn't understand that.
Well, right, because what happened was, at one point, I believe Clinton brokered Arafat and Rabin to actually publicly meet and shake hands, which was the first time this ever happened in the history of the conflict. And there was really a feeling of like, okay, like the Jews and the Muslims are finally going to work it out because the two biggest leaders are actually shaking hands and having a conversation. But then what was happening at the same time was there were certain people that didn't like this coming together. And there was an extremely right-wing Jewish kid that was going around and meeting with a bunch of right-wing rabbis and I guess he had quoted something in the Torah that said, well, if a Jew kills another Jew, then he should be killed based on these passages. So therefore, if Rabin's policies are killing Jews, should Rabin be killed?
Right.
And some of the rabbis said, well, hypothetically, yes.
Sure.
Not thinking this is actually going to happen. And from what I understand, Netanyahu was part of this real right-wing kind of anti-Rabin feeling during this time. And during a peace rally in Israel, that right-wing kid goes and kills Rabin right in the middle of the square, which basically ended the peace talks because Netanyahu took over after that. And since that point, it's never been good from my point of view. And I'm Jewish, and I'm saying it.
That's definitely like one way of looking at it. I read it and I read the entire completely different story.
Okay. Let's hear your
And to
version.
me, it's all irrelevant. Netanyahu, the right, the left, all of that is just completely irrelevant. Israel's the Jewish homeland. We've tried like time and time again to work together with the brothers, our cousins and brothers, Arab and Muslim brothers and cousins. And time again, they've made it their business to not just tell us that they want us not just gone, but to actually try to pull it off. And after October 7th, there's no one's fault. It's not Netanyahu's fault that these people came over the border and took back, families and kids and murdered people. I don't know if you saw the documentary for the Nova Festival. Have you watched that yet?
No, I didn't watch the actual documentary, but I was.
You got to watch that
documentary.
You got to watch that documentary. It follows 10 kids at that festival and what they went through, and you see some crazy shit. I was there, like I went and I met the families of the hostages and all of that. To me, Israel and the Jewish people are linked, as you see, because motherfuckers hate Jews and they'll blame Israel, but at the end of the day, it's the way it is. There's anti-Semitism. People hate Jews. Israel and Jews are linked. You can't take Israel away from the Jews. You can't take it out of the equation. It's just a part of it. It's part of it because it's where we come from. It's deeply ingrained into the prayers, into the ideas, into the themes of every aspect of Judaism. And for someone who knows nothing of Judaism, which is the majority of our country that grew up in Reform America, post-Holocaust, post-getting out of Russia, post-getting out of everywhere, where religion and Judaism was the farthest thing they wanted anything to do with, and they never got to explore to understand it, it's very easy to point the fingers at politics and say this and that. But the truth of the matter is that they're bound together. And, I'm not saying I agree with all political sides and all the things that Israelis have done and this, that, and the other thing. But the bottom line is that it's a known thing that they don't want Israel there. They want to eliminate us in any fashion, in any way possible. And Israel being the homeland of the Jewish people, it needs to be. 6 million of us were murdered, not so long ago by the most technologically scientific, perfect group of people, the most civilized Germans, This shit happened in the 40s, in the 30s and the 40s, This evil exists and it'll exist again. And this happened since the beginning of time. And if you're a small-minded Jew who only sees your life, that you grew up in this golden era of Judaism in some kind of suburbs or your parents were lawyers or doctors or, that's how people see the Jews. But the Jews, we go back, It makes no sense why we're still here. It makes no sense that such a small group of people have influenced the world on such a major way. It's bonkers. And I used to get very turned off, like when I was religious, by this idea of the chosen people. It used to drive me insane. And I'll tell you now, I'm not humble anymore when it comes to it. We are the chosen motherfuckers. Like, there is no reason why such a small group of people hated and murdered for so many years have made it this far. And some of it has to do with Israel. So to think that we're just going to fucking leave, pack up, and say goodbye is a huge mistake, and I don't know, maybe I'm going on a little further than what you wanted me to do, but I just have to say how I feel about it, It's emotional for me.
It's good.
It's not going to be all, I'm not going to answer you with a million fucking facts about this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to come at it from a very emotional place. I'm very connected to it, and, that's what it is.